Good morning, greetings everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to the Starseed Ministry. It is June 27th, 2022. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome after the weekend, regardless if it's really your weekend or not. After, what can I say? Wow, a pretty intense couple of days. So, if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for being here despite a little bit of technical difficulties leading into this morning's broadcast. I hope everyone is doing well. I had a refreshing and rejuvenating, I feel like that could have been very difficult this weekend, but so important that it happened. So I personally was in a place where there was no internet or cell service other than just a minimal amount of cell service to get text messages. But other than that, no mobile data at all. And to get internet would have meant I would have to go seek it out. And I really just relished 2-3 days of not having to really interact with the news cycle or social media or any kind of digital information, other than, making sure that the cats were okay, the house sitter was settled in, and all that kind of stuff. But otherwise, it was right in front of me, right, in a camping situation, right, with the fam. And certainly there were some family dynamics that came up over the weekend that really certainly triggered me to pay attention to what turned out to be some pretty significant solar weather events, as well as the news leading up into the weekend from Friday. And regardless of where you find yourself, I don't feel like it's necessarily as black and white, although some people do feel that way. And with our moon in Gemini right now, like truly balsamic. We have a new moon coming tomorrow on the 28th of June, but Neptune is stationing retrograde. So we have this last moment to personally go back and kind of assess, right? And to evaluate and to allow the distilled essence of this last lunar cycle with a new moon in Gemini to, for us to really sit with and to feel into. Now, the thing is this moon is dark. It is almost imperceptible. Actually, what we see in front of us here is a photograph with Venus and the moon in a conjunction. So in terms of Western or tropical astrology, what you find is that they are in a longitudinal conjunction, right? A line of sight along the specific longitude. This is what a conjunction will mean. So you can see Venus here. You can see it lined up with the moon. It's actually a very crescent moon, but because of the all of the settings on this camera that was probably on some measure of telescope, this is, you're still going to see the fullness of the moon, but you do see this little lit crescent from the sun. And this is barely perceptible right now as we're coming into the time of the new moon. So we'll talk about this conjunction. We're going to talk about Venus in Gemini. Now that she's come out of Taurus, her home territory, into Gemini, it's a little bit more dicey. And the moon in Gemini at the same time, at its most balsamic. We get this one last kind of experience with the dialectic and the duality and the extreme polarization and what it's ultimately meant to lead to, which is the solstice point, right? Where we raise the flag, we make our allegiances, right, to a specific direction, a specific position, and we then go from there. We adjust ourselves from that. Now the sun is coming into the 6 to 7 degree of Cancer as of today. So in terms of our awareness and our outward expression and, our identification and our heart space, because the sun really does kind of represent the same basic function as our own heart, is we're in this adjustment period now, and now starting to come out of it and really identifying with more of the container of that family, container of those bonds, container of just love and devotion to that which you belong to, whatever that is. That can be home and family of origin. That can be a very deep and rich textured inner life and a sense of personal power. It can have to do with the womb. I feel like that's very interesting considering what just dropped on Friday in terms of the Supreme Court, and we coming into Cancer. We're about to have our first new moon, our Cancer new moon of after the solstice, and talking about those subjects. I mean, Cancer really does identify either the esoteric or exoteric, the womb, right? The space of protection and nourishment that allows something to grow. And I think that's very interesting that that's all kind of dropping around the same time and around these subjects. Very, very interesting indeed. Very thought-provoking in a lot of ways. So we'll talk about a little bit of astrology for today, especially leading up to the new moon. I have a reading that I'm going to share with you, and we'll just take a moment to look at the blasting of the Schumann, because it has not stopped. I mean, yesterday it certainly blasted, and just this morning, about 7 a.m. Eastern, it blasted even louder than yesterday. So, we're all hearing it. We're all feeling it. People are experiencing it in different ways. And the reading, we're right on track. We really are. And as much as the exoteric or external world is still really reeling from and adjusting themselves to the disappointment and the sobering realizations of their reality, energetically where people are, especially if you're finding yourself drawn to this channel and these readings, is that we have created the space, right? We have moved into that Buddhahood in some ways that was part of last week's reading for the Starseed ministry. It has now come from a guidance point into grounding us and rooting us. I think that's really remarkable. And yes, it's difficult, but there's also big expansions, really big healings, right? Things making, people coming to conclusions about things and needing to either shift their perspective or adjust themselves in the face of the collective will. And that can mean a lot of different things for people, but I do sense, and when we see the reading, you'll see here that we're in a position where this dialectic with Mercury in conjunction with Rigel today is allowing us to really mature mentally and in our thoughts, our ideas, our mind, the way our mind works. There is a maturity here that's actually a big part of Chiron and the story of Chiron right now. So I'm going to check in with the stream real quick, make sure it's going well. And that people, oh my gosh, let's see. Okay, I just want to make sure that it's streaming and that it's going well and that everything is doing what it needs to do. So, all right, my friends, I think as we talked about, Venus and the moon are in a conjunction, which is really great. And we're going to move into looking at the Schumann resonance and the weather this weekend, or the space weather, the solar weather this weekend. So I'm going to move some things around here, and we're going to get into this because you're going to, you already know, we all know, the Schumann has absolutely blasted, and it's in the midst of doing it right now, getting even louder than it did on Sunday. So you can see that there's been quite a lot of activity here in terms of the amplification, right? And there is still that consistent drop in pitch back down to kind of the baseline of the Schumann normally, even though it continues to go back up. It continues to increase in frequency back up to roughly about 8 hertz. Every time it amplifies, though, it does drop down. And we've talked about this before in terms of sound waves and the capacity to keep the pitch and the tone at a specific place when you get louder, right? And so understanding how sound waves work and just the wave function in general helps to understand what's going on with the Schumann. But we do see it's gotten loud on Sunday. It got loud this morning as well. So then I have some ideas about what this is really kind of setting us up for. So how have people been feeling? Have they been having trouble sleeping? like I said, I was out where I was not bombarded with Wi-Fi or internet signal or cell service. It was really spotty. And so I felt very rejuvenated. It was very nourishing. I didn't feel like that my system was being not only bombarded with this, but also not being bombarded with the normal just EMF pollution of life in general. And so I felt that these large amplifications came very, just there. It wasn't a drastic or uncomfortable or even, I wasn't losing sleep or anything like that. Now, leading up to this point, my cat was really, really sick on Thursday into Friday. I was having a lot of like skin issues, a lot of eruptions. You could tell that things were being kind of pushed to the surface or being flushed out. And then we had these big amplifications with the Schumann. So leading up to that point. So I was really thankful to be away and not have any temptation or capacity really to engage with the news cycle. And I found it to be so rejuvenating that I'm really recommending it for people that are in a position to do so. And I have a feeling that many people are kind of on vacation right now, which is great, because that's just what's needed. So any way that you can create this space for yourself, and that's the thing that's really wonderful when we get into the reading. It's pretty clear that people have made a concerted effort to do so in their own way, or have found themselves very synchronistically in a position, right, where they made plans months and months ago, and now they're in a place that's like, wow, I'm able to do this at just the right time. Man, I love when that happens. That is just your intuition being on point and plugged into the larger pattern that's unfolding. So, let's see if I can get my mouse to work here, guys. So, just to give some, visual reference, of course, with the Schumann resonance, with the quality, with the pitch, just like I said, and you can see here the blasting as well. It's up to 87. So Sunday morning, we're looking at 9 a.m. Eastern when it really blasted, or 11 to 1 p.m. Universal. Keep an eye on that, because that's actually connected to what the sun was doing. And I have some ideas about why it continues. Other than what is happening with the human collective, obviously there is an interaction between what we are experiencing from the Schumann, right? There is something that is got a connection or a relationship, but also what the sun is doing, and the fact that this is getting even louder suggests that the CME that was released is probably coming to us. That's just my personal opinion. If I'm wrong, that's okay, because then I learned something new. But you can see that blast here, blast this morning. The quality really didn't change yesterday morning, but it definitely responded this morning, and starting to increase the quality of the Schumann increasing. And then you have the standard, like I said, the drops in the frequency itself when it gets very loud. Same thing over here. There's a consistent drop in the frequency, right back down to that baseline. So every time it gets loud, it does that. So eventually we want to get to a point where it gets loud and the quality is really strong and it stays at that frequency. Once that happens, that is kind of, in my read of it, this is where the switch flips, right? Where we actually modulate over to the next density. And this is, we're getting, warmed up for it. And there are also probably things that kind of force the Schumann to drop in its frequency, because it needs to get loud and offer some sort of boundary, right? Such a Cancerian type of theme here of boundaries. Even if they're electromagnetic boundaries, they're still boundaries. It's very important. So what I want to show you here is, well, first we're going to make it a very seamless transition for you guys. One of the things I want to show you is that yesterday as well, you're going to see that there was a CME that was released from the sun on the 26th. So this is universal time. So one thing to just keep in mind. So, you're looking at 4 a.m. universal time. So this is midnight on the East Coast, Sunday morning, right at midnight. There's the CME released from the sun. And, this wave of the CME is shooting out. It's expanding over the course of a number of hours. You know, you're looking at 6 to 7 hours. So this leads up to about 11 a.m. Universal Time. Well, if we go back actually to the Schumann resonance in terms of when the first blast was Universal Time. Oh, look at that. You're looking at it starting to increase right around 11 a.m. Universal Time after that CME had a number of hours to really expand past the boundary around the sun itself. And so there is some, right now, as far as I understand it, there is some people aren't sure if it's away from Earth or if it's heading towards us. I'm willing to guess that, considering that the Schumann spiked really strong again, even louder this morning, I'm willing to guess here that we might be seeing CME impact in the next couple of days. And that was pretty strong. So I think we'll see what happens. And we all know that that has an impact on how we are feeling. So we saw that there was also a lot of geomagnetic disturbance on the one. Look at this. This is KP index 5. I mean, this is people really feeling it. And it stayed pretty unstable through Sunday and continuing through today so far. It's starting to come off again. And there was a surprise geomagnetic storm and auroras on Saturday night into Sunday morning. And they call that a co-interacting rotation zone, where there's fast solar wind and there's slow solar wind, and they're kind of meeting or coming, they are interacting, and then they kind of create a faster wind speed. So I feel like that's happening, because what you'll see in terms of the magnetosphere currently even is that there's not a lot of density, right? You're not getting a lot of, protons per cubic centimeter. There's not a lot of density, but there is wind speed that's coming in, and that's part of this co-interacting rotational, these fast and slow solar winds kind of meeting each other. Where they come from, I'm not really sure about that yet. So there's not a lot of density, but there is a lot of disturbance, and there's solar wind that's moving pretty swiftly so far. So it's still kind of causing a disturbance. There's probably still auroras, and you can feel it. And then there's another big blast from the Schumann itself, right? It got really, really loud this morning. So again, so VC says, I always seem to get such bad migraines when there's CME Schumann spikes. While the pain sucks, it's nice to find something they correlate to. That is actually something that is really very common in terms of the Schumann, and I used to get those types of symptoms all the time. And what I have found is that as I am stretching my astral container, as my energy body is starting to, whatever is going on that is allowing me to access my own, the more that my own electromagnetic field, right, your own aura, your Merkaba, however you describe it, the more that it is starting to raise in its own frequency or its own pitch, I have found that and this is something other people report too, that the blasts of the Schumann start to become almost euphoric. And when it's not loud and it goes back down to that baseline, or it goes back down to a really soft volume, is when I start to feel personally a lot more density. So it's interesting, and I've noticed that there is a progression in the way people are experiencing the Schumann, and it's no picnic, obviously, to have these migraines and these headaches. And one of the things that I was experiencing right before it got really loud is just skin eruptions everywhere, like all kinds of itchy things. I got a cold sore, right? And I've been pretty meticulous about what's going into my body lately, and so to have all of that come up, I could definitely feel that was something coming out. So I totally feel that, and it is nice to know that there's a correlation, because once you make that connection, and you have that as part of another experience to add into the overall experience, then you can start to work with the Schumann, and you can start to calibrate your own self to it. But a lot of people have those bad migraines. They have ringing in the ears. They have will have headaches, inflammation in their body. I always had, like, every joint in my body would just be on fire, and I would that all the way up my spine, and so I'd have really bad headaches. My entire spine, every joint that was degenerating was like flaring, and so I see that happens a lot too with people and the Schumann. So it's not unusual at all for that to be happening. So I do want to share the reading for today, just to get a sense of where we all are spiritually, energetically, in our esoteric work, and to show that we really truly are on track in a lot of ways. And you're going to see a cast of characters that have returned after last week's, and they've moved into positions that are less gift oriented and are very much now integrated into our own experience. So let me find the reading. Okay, my friends. So we have a princess on either side here in our horizontal axis, right? The consciousness, a cause and effect relationship. One is upright, the princess of discs, which is Venus in the earth signs. And we just had Venus in an earth sign, which is Taurus. We have the princess of swords, which is Venus in the air signs. And Venus is currently in an air sign in early Gemini. And it's reversed. And then we have the three of swords in the middle. Sorrow, right? This is one of the, this is always such a hard and difficult card to get, no matter what, because it really does indicate some very sobering realizations, painful realizations, right? Looking at things that other people don't want to look at and analyze. It's Saturn in Libra, right? And Saturn is also in an air sign right now, which is Aquarius, in its retrograde. So it's been pretty unyielding and relentless in terms of getting us into shape here, and allowing us the opportunity to establish what is going to lead us to transmuting these emotional energies. And what I talked about on Friday seemed to be pretty important, right? Like stripping it down to the bare essentials, right? Lilith was in a trine to Saturn, and we're going to find that the moon in the same position in a trine to Saturn today. So when that was pretty deeply embedded, something that was more about this primal self-preservation of Lilith is now much more of a personal, in our own feels experience. And so it's almost like it's surfacing now. And dark moon, it's very difficult to have clear reflection on what is going on subconsciously, internally as well. So that's something to consider. And, a lot of people are having some pretty hard times right now in a lot of different ways, for a lot of different reasons. And as depending on where you find yourself in this, in your experience, it's really important to, really exercise some compassion towards yourself and to other people who are really struggling right now, even if you don't agree, if they're struggling because of something that is politically being presented right now. And I get the sense here that the best use of our energy can be, again, creating the sacred space. And that's what this really seems like we're doing. And to really be a loving individual towards ourselves and to other people. Because at the heart of the matter here, this Three of Swords is truly a sobering realization. Saturn and its unyielding nature in Libra, the balance of scales, right? There's no getting out of what that represents, right? The fact that Libra requires that there is some sort of material basis for the balancing, and that no amount of argument or no amount of delusion is going to take away or to mask ultimately, this very simple principle of the balance or equilibrium within ourselves, and how that is experienced outside of us as well, right? These have a relationship. So the Princess of Swords reversed, she is, she can be a real real spiteful person, right? Venus in Gemini, where the feels are only based on a very mental, rational dialectic. The battle is truly real. How she addresses that is really a function of her own sensitivity, and if she's getting her way or not. And that's part of the princess and the Venus energy too. When it's the dark Venus energy is getting your way, no matter what. And with the swords, it really is just almost disconnecting from that sensitivity and getting really into the side that you're picking. So but you can see the panda came back. The Buddha prepares is now our root energetically. This is great. Add some I am here. This is spirit always being with us, creating a sacred space. Then the Buddha prepares, right? This is a time of inner preparation. This is the root here. So for those of us who feel this, right? Good job. We've gotten here so far. We are preparing that space within our hearts as a sacred space. And that's because we have faith in spirit, and we have faith in our own connection to spirit, the great spirit, divine source, God, whatever, right? And it is our heart that's the sacred space. We have created that space there so that we can really be this loving Queen of Roses in the face of some serious disappointment, and for many people, the rug being pulled out from under them. They thought that things were, cast in stone or something that was forever. And when you have that illusion kind of broken in front of you, Neptune stationing retrograde today too. I mean, this I've always talked about, how Neptune's retrograde period is usually the fog may clear, but then there's no way you can talk yourself into any of the delusional fantasy here. It's all right in front of you, and that this is where the 12th house can get really very difficult, is because it's still the house of endings. It's the Piscean house, but it also is bondage. It is isolation. And it is, very, very disappointing truth for disappointing truth that can either lead to you surrendering and truly finding some healing and, redemption in some ways. That's 1/12th house, or you just find yourself just giving up, right? Or the martyrdom. That's a big part of the 12th house too. So let's start at the beginning here, just to kind of, so you guys can see all of these images here. The Princess of Discs, right? You see she has a shield, the yin and yang. We have this sense of equilibrium that's here. She's covered in furs, which I really, is very interesting, right? So there is very much this grounded quality. All the trees are bare around her, and her staff is pointed down towards the ground, like staking into the ground. But she does have this calmness about her, and a sense of beginning again. And that's what this Princess of Discs really represents. Other than Venus in all of the earth signs, it implies a new beginning to a cycle, right? This is the last court card in all 4 of the suits. So new manifestation, creation, growing, birth. She is a generous, she's kind. She is very loving. She has faith, right? She represents faith, sensitivity, and concentration, right? There is something really just very generous here, very kind, very maternal. And so the Queen of Pentacles, you can think about, or the Page of Pentacles, I suppose, that this is the Venus or the Venusian energy in the earth signs. And so in her most basic, her most familiar element, at least, Venus also rules Libra, and we'll get to that too in terms of the air sign that Venus rules. But it's not Gemini, there's a sense of responsibility with Libra. There's a balancing of the scales through Venus's sensitivity. They're mutable air, and Venus, whatever she wants, she's going to get it. And you can, Gemini, you can really just, it's infinite what you can think up, isn't it? So and competition, right? A sense of resistance is also part of Gemini too. And like I said, the Princess of Swords is a warrior, but very malicious and spiteful in her reversal. So, and faced with sorrow, you can see how this could easily turn into that. And what's interesting is that the energy coming into this situation, this Princess of Discs, is very stable, it's very warm, it's very generous, it's very much about something new, and that's something to consider, right? Her staff is placed in the ground, and there is a sense of a cycle starting again, right? The trees are all bare, which does signal, and she's covered in fur, so this has got this almost Capricornian solstice quality, but on the other side too, there is a sense of something new. And when you kind of plant that stake in the ground, just like 0 degrees Cancer, you are raising a new flag in some ways and beginning a process of manifestation. So we move to the heart of the matter, which is the sorrow, right? The Saturn in Libra, the 3 of Swords. This is such... So you see that there is the bending of the 2 swords at the top, but there is a very strong, very pronounced, singular, centralized sword at the heart of it that comes to a point. And the sorrow is the sobering realization, is the beautiful illusion falling away, reveals the dark side of understanding too. And this does represent analyzing what others prefer to ignore. This also can be a hard decision that has to be made. And Saturn often will represent the experience of melancholy. So when you recognize the unveiled truth and that illusion is lost, and it is very sobering. Again, Neptune retrograde is kind of a sobering up after like a bender for how long, and you're like, oh boy, what happened? There's the painful realization coming of, oh geez, this is what's really happening here. And it is painful. And melancholy is kind of this prolonged sadness that pervades every aspect of your life. And so you may find that there are people in your life, you may be feeling this in some way, this sorrow, this sobering realization, this painful realization that is presenting itself. Now, when it comes to where we are energetically, it seems a little different than that. The Buddha prepares, right? Number 13, this is the time of inner preparation before action. We reach within to find our power. We reach within to find our purpose and direction. We're not waiting for it, or not even having it be part of what's happening outside. I mean, those events will trigger action, surely, but being prepared spiritually and in your heart is what this is all about. And that inaction doesn't mean there's nothing going on when it comes to the outside. And in fact, all of these people are meditating with the Buddha, right, under the Bodhi tree. This entire heart area is lit up on this individual, and this is the inner preparation. So this was a gift last week's reading at the Starseed Ministry. It has now moved into position, and along with the panda, they were together in last week's reading, and they are still together about creating a sacred space. So this is our energetic root about the time for inner preparation. Creating a sacred space means you have to actually get into this zone here and sit, and whatever that means for you, and create this for yourself. So being in a position where I was camping and I didn't have access to any of the digital technology. I mean, I could have, but I didn't want to. The fact that it wasn't right in front of me, I was just like, yes, this is great. I can just be here and not feel any pull. And it really helped create this for me, or give me the feeling of this. And the panda along with it, right? Creating the sacred space within. And so in terms of our attention and where this power is released, this is our inner power, right? And our power is released. This is the Queen of Roses. I mean, look at how intently and lovingly she's looking at this rose, and she's surrounded by them, and they're in her hair, and everything about what her persona and what she's wearing, right? It all has this this color of pink, right? In this rose color that really brings out that the rose quartz, right? The pink color of the heart chakra when it's tender and it's open and it wants to share. This is the Queen of Roses. And so another court card, which I think is also interesting. You're flanked in the middle here by these two princess cards, but then you have the Queen truly at the top of our awareness here where the power is released, which does suggest that there's another sense of maturity here that in terms of our own self-perception and our awareness and where this power is released, there's a maturity here and the sense of real motherhood rather than kind of and more of the mother phase rather than the maiden or younger phase of the three-pronged lunar phase, right? The maiden, the mother, and the crone. So this is about the mother energy, which again, so Cancerian. We're about to have this Cancer new moon, okay? So this is about where our attention truly is. And it's very subtle, right? With the mouse involved, there's something here that maybe people aren't taking into consideration. So the Princess of Swords, let's take a look at her because this is the reversal. So she's up on this pedestal in the clouds, right? This is Venus in the air signs. She's got her sword. There's this type of like shield in front of her that's made out of, I'm not even sure what, it's like a geometric pattern. Now there's wind, right? There's motion here. There's a sense that she's kind of almost defending herself rather than acting in any aggressive way or as the aggressor. And she's up in the clouds, right? It's more of the conceptual air sign. So there's a really very rigorous and sharp intellect here with the Princess of Swords, but there's also very perceptive. But when she's reversed, very destructive, and it's like a child who lacks any kind of morality, right? Stubborn and cruel and malicious and spiteful and very wasteful, right? And a failure to recognize facts. I mean, you take the rest of this out of the equation and, it's very easy to get caught up more in the negative aspect of this with the Three of Swords here, as opposed to the Venusian aspect, which started this whole process as like, this is a new cycle now. This was the solstice moment. And we're coming into the Cancer new moon as well. So the idea that we are establishing a new set of allegiances, a new cycle for ourselves, a new creation, a new growth, a new birth, whatever it is, and then meeting this very strange axis of power here that at the heart is got some very painful realizations, but is, rooted and power released in some very, very feminine, very receptive and still types of energies. It seems like no matter what, there is this sense of potential maliciousness and spiteful and almost very cruel energy that could be coming as a result of this sorrow. But we also know that this is part of the process that is unfolding. And I think Barb was the one that said it in a comment on Telegram, actually, that it's this process of maybe the rug being pulled out for a number of reasons. It's not just one particular issue. This is you're going to see it. You're going to see it, if you haven't already, in multiple areas of life where the sobering realization is going to present itself or already has. But this is part of the new growth coming in, right? That we have to create a space for this new growth, which requires the release of all of the unnecessary extraneous energy, right? There is a pruning that is also happening as well. And nature is the pruner of, at least all of the natural plant life, right? The seasonal cycle and just the process of the life cycle of the plant will often, especially in a seasonal cycle, fall and winter will prune a plant in a lot of ways, right? When everything falls away and dies. But within ourselves emotionally, it's going to be really important. And it's going to seem very strange as the Gemini moon is then in a square to Neptune. Again, there's the one last kind of hurrah here with getting into the essential archetypal nature of yin and yang, just kind of like with the shield that the princess is holding. And the experience of taking your own having your own individual, unique response based on one singular collective experience, right? Which is what growth and creation is all about. We don't all respond to the same thing in the same way. And I think this is where it's going to be a struggle with the retrograde of Neptune, is because we have to not only contend with that there is no, totalitarianism is not an option. And if everybody needs to respond to things in the same way, and you're going to force them to through either whatever ways that we all do this, we're going to have a really hard time with this retrograde, because we're going to have to go back. We're going back over, and we're going to clear some more debris out so much deeper than the first time we crossed over 24 to 25 degrees Pisces. Yep. It's going to get interesting, but we are on track. That's what this is all about. Even if other people are having their meltdowns for whatever reason, realize, see them as human beings, and that their meltdowns are coming from something very real for them. Even if there are layers that have been built up to condition people, their emotions, their raw emotions are very real. And if we can address people based on that and get to the root, help each other get to the root of that, I think that we're going to have so much, it's just going to be so much better just in general. So there's not a lot of need for I told you so necessarily, although that is very satisfying in a lot of ways, or just knowing that this has been coming for a long time. And again, it's going to be like, yeah, I knew this was coming. I knew it was going to happen. So here's our gift here. Besides the panda, I am here. Number 22, affirms your own strength, your focus on the present. I think that this is a really important thing to consider, that to be where you are, to bloom where you're planted right now, and arrive at your own spiritual goals, whatever they are. Arrive at them and declare it for yourself that they are already here. And this is how you attract these situations in the material to you. And be assured that spirit is always here. This is truly what this represents. And the panda, again, creating a sacred space. This is all part of the Buddha prepares. This is all part of our energetic root, our power, where it's coming from, right? It's not coming from controlling anything. It's not coming from, using any means to destroy our competition or that which we feel is our enemy. This is truly this Christ impulse here, and the Buddha as well, right? To create a space in which spirit can be fully present in the material. And that's in fact what we're here to really be doing. That's part of what Earth School is all about. So even if it has been misused and exploited, because it has, and we know that, and we misuse and exploit ourselves, and we don't need any ETs necessarily to come and do that, or any other forces. We are perfectly capable of doing it ourselves. But it's important to realize that's also part of the process of learning how to be a fully spiritual, aware being in a material existence. So the mouse is about paying closer attention, right? To get down low in a lot of ways, and to be able to, have a very, very direct and very sensitive connection to the much more subtle energies. So, and often it will signal that there is, like it says, something that you're overlooking in terms of details. And I think really what it is that in terms of overlooking, some people might be overlooking some important details, but also too that being present allows you to gain this level of sensitivity. And also being present, like this Queen of Roses, if we go back for just a second, look at what she's very attentive to what's right in front of her in this very loving way. And again, the mouse is, really bringing our attention to not get small and hide necessarily, and caution certainly is important in paying attention to body language. But this says to me, this is a little bit more about getting much more in tune with the subtle rhythm, vibration, the frequency itself, because that's what the mouse is really good at: reading body language, feeling energy, being hyper vigilant. And we don't want to be hyper vigilant out of trauma. We want to be present. right? And that's what this Queen of Roses is, present. And the Ascent here, the Seven of Keys, is really just, I really feel like that the material, there's the material aspect that is associated with this, right? Our goals, what we're trying to achieve in a lot of ways is something we have to do ourselves and truly takes a lot of effort, determination, real work. But there are the pieces of equipment that we've gathered along the way. And I just, I think it's really simple in terms of the ascension. Our material ascension is very much based off our loving presence and releasing our power through this vessel that is the Queen of Roses. So it doesn't matter if male, your sex, your gender, that's not it. We all have this dualistic nature. So I think that there's such a strong potential for a spiteful and maybe malicious response to this very sobering realization, but at the same time we're holding it down in a lot of ways, and realize that the ascension or the awakening or one's spiritual evolution is really so much more about the love and compassion and forgiveness, right? Oh my gosh, it's one of the most difficult things to do, but it is one of the most transformative experiences. I mean, you talk about, you just propel yourself up to the top of the mountain when you're truly in your heart able to really forgive yourself, other people, right? People in general, things that have happened in the past, all of those things. So we're going to look at the chart here just a little bit. Oops, that's not what I wanted to turn off. And I'm going to check in with the stream here too and see what's going on with people just in general. So Emily says, hi there, I slept for 12 hours last night. Good for you. I totally slept and took a nap yesterday, like a really strong nap, and then went to sleep again, like for a full night. So I love that stuff. I've been sleeping a lot in a good way, not because I'm like... not necessarily out of exhaustion. It's just my body's like, okay, it's time to rest now. I had to use some nervous system tricks to get to sleep last night, but I got rejuvenated, ready to face the day. I do feel like I'm planting my staff now, forging ahead despite the weather, determined to wake up irregardless of sorrow and pain. Wonderful. Wonderful. You just have that determination, just like that person in the Seven of Keys, right? I'm going to get to the top here. This is my goal. I put everything into this. Like, I'm not going to stop now. So I like that perspective, Barb. And there are, whatever your coping mechanisms, right? The tools in your kit that help with your nervous system, like Barb said. Emily's saying she's just sleeping, right? If you're having issues with the Schumann, if you're attuned to Reiki, right? I mean, self-Reiki is so powerful. And certain frequencies, you got to be, finding like a certain Tibetan bowls or crystal bowls, somebody actually playing them is really, really beneficial as well. Sound healing in general is going to help with a lot of these things. It's really important. I really appreciate your feedback as well, guys. So let's see here. There we go. We already went over, a lot of the astrology of this week. So the new moon forecast for Cancer rising, sun and moon, that's going to be posted today. This is a really great opportunity. If you haven't done so already and you want to know when I post other videos, you can subscribe to this channel. Definitely hit the like button if you're enjoying this content. It really does make a difference. It's easy to forget. I watch a lot of content on multiple platforms and really enjoy it and always forget to hit the like button. So I'm endeavoring to make that more of a habit. So I invite you to do the same so that other people can find this work as well. And you'll know when I drop new videos. So the Cancer new moon forecast for Cancer rising, sun and moon, it's going to be up today. So we already talked a lot about this last week, but I just want to go over today. Again, the moon is in Gemini. It's already past Mercury. Mercury is in conjunction with Rigel. This is the fixed star that's in the Orion constellation that is the front foot of Orion, right? So there is this kind of putting your best foot forward. There's this mental metamorphosis that's coming now because we're in the second half of Gemini, and Mercury being the ruler of this sphere. Like every degree that Mercury is going through in Gemini is just fully realized in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of impassioned speech in the last day. A lot of people expressing what they've discovered, which is very much about the exteriorization is the second half of Gemini. And then Venus is still in the first half. She's actually now in conjunction with the Hyades and will be in a conjunction with Aldebaran, very soon. She's at 5 to 6 degrees of Gemini today. So, by the time we get to the weekend, she's going to be conjunct Aldebaran. The fixed star Aldebaran, which is the bullseye, right? Literally in the bullseye, the Taurus constellation, also connected to Archangel Michael. Talked a lot about that already at the Catalyst Classroom. So if you are signed up to that, you have access to that video. And of course, if you subscribe through Subscribestar now, you'll still have access to everything that's been posted to the Catalyst Classroom. So the whole catalog is still there if you want to access it. So learning about Aldebaran, the Hyades, Starseeds, all of that stuff is there. And Venus, again, it's going to make it so much more in the physical feels, in a sense of value and worth and meaning, and something that is going to have an impact on our actual material senses and relationships as well. Venus often rules relationships. She does rule the 7th house and Libra, so that's all about relationships. In Gemini, it can be a little bit... it can go both ways, right? You can find yourself being less emotionally involved in and being able to be more, not necessarily diplomatic, but a little bit more detached emotionally from a conversation or in a relationship, for instance, or ideas. You're not necessarily getting caught up in your own emotional feels of it or value and worth, but you're able to see the value and worth of the conversation, of the debate, of having the polarization. So and the thing about moving in these early degrees of Gemini is it's very much a discovery phase, as we've come to realize many times over. But it also has a lot to do with ambition, right? Because as your knowledge base starts to grow, the consciousness starts to grow, there's kind of this sense of like, oh, I can do anything, right? I just have to think it up. It's infinite, manifestation. So with Venus involved, I mean, it's really about how, again, value, worth, and meaning of the dialectic. It really depends on how you are approaching it in other ways. So I feel like this has already kind of been presenting itself since Venus has moved into Gemini and is only just going to get stronger. So the moon was in a conjunction with Venus this morning, and I actually want to confirm exactly the degree. So the moon was conjunct Mercury, is in a sextile to Chiron. And then, this was yesterday that the moon was in a conjunction with Venus. Let me look real quick and see. 4 to 5 degrees of Gemini. So we're still getting into that. We're getting into that realm of the Hyades at that point. And so the Hyades star cluster in Greek mythology, the Hyades are the half-sisters of the Pleiades because they share a father in the Titan Atlas who was basically punished by having to hold the firmament up from the world, and that caused a lot of bad feelings, I'm pretty sure, and a lot of discomfort and a lot of grief, right? A lot of grief. So without getting too much into those weeds, because that is for the Catalyst Classroom. We talked on Friday about how there were these consistent relationships between the personal planets and these larger planets. So you can see that Mars and Saturn are in a sextile today, that Chiron and Mercury are in a sextile today. By the end of today, Venus and or tomorrow, Venus and Jupiter are going to be in a sextile. You're going to find that, and then the moon is making all of these connections in Gemini, right? Conjunct Mercury, sextile Chiron, and he's going to be in a trine to Mars, and then square Neptune, just like we talked about. So that's going to be actually later in the day if we go ahead into the evening. You can see, and we looked at this on Friday too. You're also going to find that Lilith is going to start, and the sun is starting to move into its square with Jupiter, and the new moon is going to be directly square to Jupiter. And we talked about this too, is that for as much as we have the big picture within us, and we can really start to be influenced by spiritual agency, spiritual energy, right? That our consciousness and our sense of self is able to start growing, but we also, and we're able to be molded in some ways or influenced, but not in a way that's over, beyond what we can handle, right? But it's going to be this new moon that is kind of, the square here is very interesting to me. And one of the things I talked about on Friday was that as much as we believe, because, Jupiter ruling Sagittarius is really about belief, and certainly as a ruling Pisces is very transcendent in spiritual understanding as well. It's one thing to believe something and to have the big picture and to really act in a very self-serving type of way with this Jupiter in Aries. It's another thing entirely as we are attempting to grow within the boundaries that we know and that we are identified with, and start kind of not necessarily imitating, but we do find that which we want to grow into and start imitating it. Now, I don't want to say mimicking it so much as acting as if. And that does require that we have some sort of representation that we identify with, not just within ourselves and our subjective experience of I am, but, Aries and Cancer are naturally in a square to each other because it's the subjective experience of I, and then the collective experience of we in relation to I, right? You start to have to consider more than just yourself when you have Cancer in terms of a sign, and when you're in Cancer, because this is about what it allows you to have your sense of self grow in the first place. So I think this is going to be very interesting. Again, these reality checks here, with the sun and the new moon in Cancer square Jupiter are pretty strong, it seems to me. So Saturn in its sextile to Mars. Saturn is also in a conjunction with the dwarf planet Eris, the goddess of discord. And so, of course, the chaos that Mars is literally just rolling the apple in on behalf of Eris, and just like, okay, this chaos is where I realize that there are new potentials, right? Just like that Venus or the Princess of Discs, right? There's something new that's growing, and it's the chaos. It is the upheaval in a lot of ways. It's the entropy of balance and equilibrium being thrown off that we really learn that we exist in two places at once. And part of the creation of something new is the the undifferentiated, formless space of chaos. So, and I'm not advocating for it, against it. I'm just giving you the symbolic references here. And in a sextile, right, 60-degree angle to Saturn, this is something that you invest these energies into each other to transmute something. And literally, this is about an emotional energy that is successfully transmuted, because Saturn is like, this is how you do it. And in fact, you can't get around this wall right here. You either transmute these emotional energies or you bounce right off of this force field within yourself. And so we've talked about how Saturn retrograde here in Aquarius, I mean, the pressure is going to be really strong. The density, the gravity of it, and not everybody is going to be able to maintain themselves. And you can see that happening already, and it has been happening. But this sextile is where we get to use, in some ways, the astrology and realize here that our ability we need something to actually transmute, to practice this, to actually create a strong field within us. And it's this Mars sextile Saturn that I think is really going to provide this opportunity, right? Especially with our own inner warrior that Mars represents. Now, Mercury and Chiron are in a sextile. The moon was in a sextile to Chiron. Again, this 17 degrees is Rigel, right? And 17 degrees Aries is Tau Ceti. So I think this is going to be a focus for the next Catalyst Classroom, at least the Tau Ceti story, because Chiron's going to be in this degree in conjunction with this star, this fixed star, for a while now, for a number of weeks. And so I'm going to focus on that in subscriber only content. But this is where Mercury and the moon are sextile to this Chiron at Rigel. Right? Putting the best foot forward, the mental metamorphosis. You go from, this really kind of robust but very youthful type of energy to kind of growing up and maturing in a mental way. And this is, again, this is something that allows for us to get past this maybe erroneous identity of like, I just have to create it myself, right? And it's not to say that that doesn't have a benefit in some ways, right? When you kind of do this inner withdrawal in order to generate power within yourself, like really push away the outside influences, but you don't want to do it in terms of like kind of a narcissistic, like turning away. And that's always where the Chiron energy could find itself being expressed. I feel like that this sextile, again, is a moment where we kind of grow up and realize in a number of ways that we generate this energy not to keep it and hoard it for ourselves, but to present it, to express it, to release it into the growth of something more. And in this case, it is the mental metamorphosis and the maturity that comes along with stepping into conjunction with Rigel, both Mercury and the moon, that I think is going to be, again, it's time to grow up out of this, this kind of like inner narcissistic, hoarding pattern of our own energy and start to prepare more for the experience of being in something, in a emotional situation that is more than yourself, that you are loyal to, that has your back, you have its back, whatever it is for you. Cancer, again, the womb. The family unit, right? Your inner life, your emotional cohesion. All of these things are very Cancerian. I just keep getting this sense of as the individualism is important, and with Mars and Jupiter in Aries like this, and with Chiron being here for so long, it's like you don't want to lose sight of how that spark of the creator within us is what makes us who we are, and we don't ever want to let that go, and we want to act on it. We don't want to get pulled back into old identities and shame and guilt about who we are, but this does feel in a lot of ways that we have to start coming out of that and see what it's leading to, rather than being so absorbed and so instinctually reacting to things with Mars and Aries, or being very aggressive in a lot of ways, that we don't realize that things affect more than just ourselves. And I think the more that we can start widening that perspective and start realizing that more people than just ourselves exist. And I say us because I don't necessarily feel like that people should be lecturing anybody on anything. I don't care what the subject is at this point, unless it's your own child, right? That's between you and your kids or whatever, right? But in terms of like a social or a larger influencer type of space, I just don't see. We all have work to do, and it's this new moon that's coming is really about identifying what it is that we want to grow into and start acting in accordance with that. This is it's because we're going to need that stabilization as we go through July, and that the painful realizations keep coming and coming as Neptune stations and then stations retrograde, and it starts its retrograde cycle, which will take us through December. So these are very large patterns, right? Just like with Pluto, just like with Uranus, these are large patterns that impact lots of people, large stretches of time. So Mercury and Venus and the Sun, and even Mars to a certain degree, are our experience of what's happening right now. And all of them are having relationships with these larger planets that influence larger periods of time. So that's the other thing too, is to take advantage of this and realize that are big cycles that are that are changing in the course of changing, will change, move in its retrograde, and we have these personalized experiences and opportunities to transmute those relationships now, so that when it gets really intense, we know exactly who we are, where we belong, and why we're doing what we're doing. And that makes it so much more, I don't want to say easy, it's like muscle memory, right? It brings you back here to this state of compassion, forgiveness, seeing people as human beings, right? Like really taking the high road in a lot of ways, and acting in accordance with who and what you want to grow into, okay? That seems to be a lot of what this week has in store for us. So new moon is tomorrow. That's the 28th. The 1st is July. July 1st is Friday. That's what I meant to say. And we have a new moon tomorrow. We have the moon moving through Cancer into Leo. We're going to have another activation of Procyon as the moon reaches the last degrees of Cancer and is opposite Pluto. So that's going to be something to keep in mind. That's on the 30th. And on the 1st, which is July 1st on Friday, Mars is going to square Pluto. Oof. Now that is going to be intense as well. Plus that's going to activate Andromedan Galaxy Starseed. So lots to look forward to this week, my friends. And I'm so glad that you're here. Unusual migraines and low back pain. Some are saying these are ascension symptoms. I think that it's really important to consider that it's not just one or the other in terms of those things, right? And people are talking about the Schumann got very loud, right? When the magnetics of our planet change, it impacts the magnetics of us. When the sun erupts and there is solar wind or high intensity plasma, any of that stuff, it's going to impact us. Now, ascension symptoms are very physical, and I think it's important that we also consider that there is actual EMF pollution that causes the same symptoms, right? And so what I'm coming to realize is that discernment's really important here, to pay attention to your own body and to know what is EMF pollution or digital frequency intrusion, and what is the result of our interaction with the cosmos, and what is really like a burning away. And I do feel like that was the case, like leading up to Friday, leading into Saturday, into Sunday. Before that, like I said, I was erupting all over all kinds of weird eruptions all over my skin. My cat was really, really sick, and I was very worried about him because he couldn't hold anything down, and he just looked so terrible. And he has feline he has immunodeficiency virus, right? So I'm working on how to actually address that, because that's just, that's one of those things that in the world of veterinary medicine, and maybe my vet tech people out there can confirm or add to this, that there's really nothing except symptom control. Like there's really no I have to find a specialist, basically. So the point I'm trying to make here is that there was some really strong purging that was happening, and some very painful in a lot of ways experiences. So ascension symptoms, yes, but I think it's really important that we don't bypass our very material reality here and understand the material and physical mechanisms for ascension symptoms, because it really does in a lot of ways encourage people to bypass taking care of their own bodies, being aware of EMF pollution, artificial frequency intrusion. Those are all real things. And and what are spiritual and natural kind of upgrades. That's the other thing too. So that's just something to consider. And people are having unusual migraines. I've seen people having like some really strong emotional issues, people having problems with each other, right? It's coming out in a lot of different ways. Lots of energy everywhere, good and negative. Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. I think that's a really good thing to consider. So I appreciate your guys' feedback so very much. So one thing I want to share with everyone before we sign off for today and this this grounding and rejuvenating broadcast. Thank you so much for being here. I really do mean that. I'm still offering the Starseed reading, 60-minute recording for $66. I usually require a very strong foundation with your natal chart, or you get it from me first, but I feel like that people are really needing this right now. So if you're interested in this, you can go to the website. It's linked in the description box below. If you're interested in the Starseed Fellowship or a Catalyst Classroom, you can link to a video that's in the description box below. That's an intro to the Starseed Ministry, and get an idea of what the Starseed Fellowship, the Catalyst Classroom is all about. You can subscribe through Subscribestar. That's in the description box below as well. So thank you so much for being here, guys. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. I love you. Take very good care of yourselves this week, okay? We all hands on deck right now. We need to be present, keep a space open for love and forgiveness and compassion, and head on a swivel in a lot of ways too. I know that seems kind of fear-mongering, but it's not. It's just being present, being here, and having your heart be open but not vulnerable to intrusion, right? We want to be open to love and to a sense of community and communion with each other. I think it's really our best bet. This is part of the North Node in Taurus, right? Is that the value and meaning of life is inherent in life. Okay, so with that being said, my friends, thank you for being here. I'll see you on Friday for our Catalyst Astrology Report. Cancer people, your new moon forecast will be up by the end of today. Make sure you're subscribed so that you can get that on your feed, and we will talk to each other sooner than later. Bye, folks.